Welcome back. Well, continuing with our theme on elections, Mr. Jude Ilo joins us from our studios in Abuja. He's the Open or Country Director, Open Society Initiative for West Africa. Thank you for coming on today, Mr. Jude. Give us your impression about our preparations for the elections. What would you say? Because, I mean, you might have caught some of the demonstration here today by the resident electoral commissioner in Lagos.
It's safe to say that one is impressed by the effort of INEC in dealing with the logistic gap that was identified earlier in the year. And given what we know, the demonstrations we've seen on TV, the conversation we've had with INEC officials, it is safe to say that INEC is making remarkable efforts in getting ready for the elections. We don't expect a perfect preparation, but from what we've seen on ground, I think one is reassured that INEC is able to pull this off.
Now, I'm sure you're in Abuja there, and you must be aware of a number of cases in court. Do you fear that INEC could stumble on its way to conducting free and fair elections?
Well, like you rightly said, when the cases are in court, it's no more a question of INEC stumbling. It becomes about the court interpreting and giving judgment on the cases before it. So ideally, I mean, from my own point of view, the cases in courts, for me, are not INEC's making. They are not the ones that went to court. Nigerians who were aggrieved went to court on a number of issues. And of course, this is a democracy. People should be allowed to ventilate their grievances through the judicial process. And one is also hoping that the courts are guided by the laws, by the Constitution, and of course by the greater interests of Nigeria as a country.
So you hold no apprehensions as to the cases in court?
I mean, like every lawyer will tell you, you can't predict the courts. We just can't predict the courts. However, we believe in the skills and credibility of these managers of justice in Nigeria. And so I don't want to preempt what's going to come out of the courts, but I'm believing that the courts should be able to do what is right. In my own opinion, I find some of the cases very frivolous. I find them disruptive. But again, that is my own opinion. People should be allowed to ventilate, like I said earlier. But I find a lot of those cases, in my view, without merit, and I am hoping the courts will do well to throw them out so that I can concentrate on what they're doing.
Part of the issues people also had while all this preparations was going on, because, I mean, there's been rescheduled, one, security, but with respect to the distribution of the permanent voter cards, INEC has said, well, if we hit 85%, we should be good, but you have others who think, why don't you target 100? And maybe if you fall short, you could get probably even 90%, not even 85%.
Yeah, Chamberlain, I mean, we've had this conversation has been raging on in Nigeria, and it is interesting how, you know, sometimes our people demonstrate a selective memory. Permanent voters cards were printed after the 2007 elections. As of 2011, less than 50% of those cards were collected. In the elections, permanent voters cards were also distributed. Less than 60% of those cards were collected. Same applies to Osun, and we had elections in those states, and Nigerians were excited about the fact that the elections were credible. And so I think as a people, we're being unduly fixated on numbers. We're talking about close to 68 million voters who were registered in 2011. A rough calculation of the mortality rate in Nigeria, would suggest at least quite a percentage of those people who were registered in 2011 are diseased. A number of Nigerians have relocated. A number of Nigerians are not interested in collecting their voters card. And so when we begin to judge INEC on a discretionary right of individuals to collect or not to collect their voters' card, I think we're missing the point. However, we cannot run away from the fact that there's been challenges with the collection of PVCs and distribution of PVCs. That has to be acknowledged. But we see an institution that is making frank efforts to deal with those challenges. I have no reasons to impute bad will to the leadership of INEC in the distribution of PVCs. They've not shown that to me. I don't see reason to think that way. And I also think it is mathematically logical to think that INEC should aim for 100% collection of PVCs. We can aim for 100% distribution or availability of PVCs for Nigerians who are registered to collect. But the collection should be up to Nigerians to collect it or not to collect it. And even in our laws, under the Electoral Act, we have this provision about substantial compliance. I would think that INEC has substantially complied.
But isn't that for the cost to determine? Isn't that for the cost to determine the substantial compliance bit of it? Because as we just said initially, I mean, yes, you could target or prepare for printing those cards, make sure they're printed, you're ready. But the substantial compliance part, can they be the judge of that themselves?
It wouldn't, I mean, I'm not saying INEC should judge if they've complied. It's for the court to do, I agree. But what INEC, just like you've mentioned, the duty of INEC is to print these cards and make them available. The collection is within the discretion of Nigerians. No Nigerian should be forced to collect his PVC. That's the point. And then if INEC has done their part, or its part, of making these cards available, that is to the extent of their statutory mandate. And they've done their job. Whatever happens with Nigerians coming to collect or not coming to collect, frankly, shouldn't be blamed on INEC. And there will be never a time, you can quote me on this, never a time you will have 100% collection of PVC. There is never a time you have 100% turnout in voting. The best we got in 2011 was less than 60%. And so I think really that some people are being a bit disruptive, focusing on how many people collected and who did not collect. If the cards are available, we should at least allow INEC to run with the election. And secondly, if Nigerians, if political parties and political players have expended the amount of energy they've put forward in discrediting INEC in helping that this card collection is properly done, I think would have been somewhere else better than where we are right now.